When most Americans turn on their faucets, out comes water that contains a very small amount of fluoride. The naturally occurring mineral has been added to the water supply in many places for decades because of its connection to certain dental benefits. But skepticism, conspiracy theories, and outright fear of fluoridated water have been around for just about as long.
If it's really doing things to our teeth and helping them improve, like, couldn't it be doing other things to other parts of our body that we're not aware of? And maybe we haven't asked the right questions in order to identify?
In recent years, that debate has gotten more intense as prominent skeptics have gained attention, like recently appointed Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I'm going to give them good information about the science, and I think that fluoride will disappear.
So why all the confusion? Well, fluoride has continued to be controversial in part because something big has been missing.
We haven't had a randomized controlled trial, which would be like a very conclusive way to show the benefits of fluoride.
Now, a hunt is underway for that gold standard. A study currently happening in eastern North Carolina hopes to battle health misinformation and answer some of the long-standing questions about fluoride, all while navigating a minefield.
A lot of the time, folks that bring up concerns with fluoride are sort of labeled fringe. And you definitely have people that fit that description who may not like fluoride. And that's where it gets a little tricky because you have people who are reputable scientists who are studying this, who are asking valid questions and trying to do valid research.
I'm Anissa Khalifa. This is The Broadside, where we tell stories from our home at the crossroads of the South. This week, the fight over fluoride and how challenging what we think we know might actually cool the conversation. Okay, well, first question's easy. If you could please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Sarah Israelson Hartley, and I'm a freelance reporter working for the Assembly.
Sarah recently dug into the science and murky politics of fluoride in a deeply reported feature for the Assembly, an online news outlet based in North Carolina. And what she found was a topic defined by contradiction.
What I had heard was that it seemed to be pretty settled. But at the same time, there was these two very different sides. There's a definite pro side and there's a definite con side.
Within this fluoride debate, there's those in favor, led by the dental health community, and those who have serious doubts.
That are saying, hey, wait, you're going a little bit fast. Like, why are we adding this to the water and blanket covering an entire community?
And we're talking about a lot of folks here. According to the CDC, 73% of people on community water systems in the United States have fluoridated water. A community water system is the public water source for a town or city's population. In North Carolina, that percentage is even higher. About 88% of community water in the state contains fluoride. But why is it there in the first place?
Fluoride is really effective at preventing tooth decay. And so it's been added to our water because it was this very cost-effective way to address cavities and reduce the amount of time that, people were spending at the dentist.
That may sound great, but too much of a good thing can be a problem. Very high levels of fluoride can cause some pretty bad physical side effects.
Researchers know that too much fluoride can cause staining on your teeth. If you have it at supremely high levels, it can even make your teeth turn brown, almost look like there's chocolate on your teeth. Very disconcerting. The staining of our teeth is called dental fluorosis. And they also know that if you ingest too much, that you can have, these are getting very, very high levels. It can affect your bones and joints. And so you can have skeletal fluorosis. So it'll make it sort of hard for you to have mobility.
And what are the current recommended levels of fluoride in water?
So for the United States, the recommended level is 0.7 parts per million in water. So it's like a very small amount when you think about drops in a bucket, just a very, very small amount. But that amount is what they believe leads to this sort of protection of your teeth.
Once again, the recommended level in the U.S. is nowhere near those that put people at risk for things like dental and skeletal fluorosis. But these assurances have done very little to end the debate around fluoride. And Sarah says questions about its general safety have lingered for so long, in part because research into its consumption has lacked something crucial.
The dental community for years has claimed that fluoride is safe and effective. We've seen that it's effective in stopping tooth decay. But the safe question has been sort of a little bit less unpacked because, again, we haven't had a randomized controlled trial of fluoride.
In the world of research, a randomized controlled trial is considered a gold standard. Its setup is simple.
You assign two groups, one of them gets an intervention and one of them doesn't.
And that's exactly what's happening right now in Kinston, a small city in eastern North Carolina.
So in Kinston, Dr. Gary Slade, who's a dentist and a professor at UNC, is conducting a randomized trial of fluoride in drinking water. And he's looking at whether fluoride in this case, bottled drinking water, is going to be more effective than non-fluoridated water at preventing cavities in children.
People just think, well, we know it works. You don't do randomized trials on things that you know work, some people say. But it is obviously the very best evidence, and fluoridation's always been criticised for external health benefits. The basis for that has been criticised because there's never been randomised study evidence to support that.
So there's this sort of assumption that we've already established that fluoride works. Look, it's helped our teeth. The case is closed. We don't need to do anything else. That's why he's wanting to do this. He isn't quite satisfied with what evidence shows. He would like to have that extra data.
And what makes Kinston an ideal place to do this kind of study?
Well, Kinston's unique because it's a fairly large area that doesn't already have fluoride in the drinking water. The way they get their water is just from the local aquifer, and it doesn't have fluoride in it, or if it does, it's very low amounts. And so that makes it a pretty good location where you can use that as your study location and compare it to other areas that may already have fluoride.
Who are the participants in this study?
Dr. Slade is working with 200 families and children in Kinston. And these are children that are between the ages of 2 to 6 months when they were recruited, and they'll be involved in the study until they're about 4 years old.
How long will it take for the study to be complete?
Many years, probably 4 or 5 years before they have initial reports. So not anything that's going to be quick. And in today's environment where people want snippets, that's just not going to happen.
To be clear, Dr. Slade's study is focusing only on the dental benefits of fluoride. Nevertheless, Sarah says the aim is to offer a piece of solid evidence to the fluoride debate, something that could help reset the conversation and encourage more rigorous and valid research.
I think we as humans don't always like to change our mind or maybe admit that we still have things to learn or that science changes and it requires that we shift. And we saw this in the pandemic as scientific recommendations evolved as we learned more. And it was sort of hard for some people to acknowledge that that was part of the process. And instead they saw it as, I can't trust the government because the message is changing. But really, raising new questions is not a reason to panic, and it's not a reason to embrace conspiracy theories. It's just an acknowledgement that science evolves. It's this process, and that as we learn more, we have to do things differently, and we may need to adjust what we've done in the past.
And that's healthy. Science changes as we learn more. This new study about the dental benefits of fluoride is one step in establishing what fluoride actually does to the body. But there's a more concerning question about fluoride. Is it hurting us? That's coming up after a quick break.
There's a lot going on right now. Mounting economic inequality, threats to democracy, environmental disaster, the sour stench of chaos in the air. I'm Brooke Gladstone, host of WNYC's On the Media. Want to understand the reasons and the meanings of the narratives that led us here, and maybe how to head them off at the pass? That's On the Media's specialty. Take a listen wherever you get your podcasts.
So, Sarah, we've been talking about the pros and cons of fluoridated water and this study that's happening in eastern North Carolina. But let's go back in time for a minute. When did we first get fluoride added to our water supply?
So the United States started putting fluoride in drinking water when they realized that it was really effective at stopping tooth decay and preventing cavities. This was back around the 1940s when they realized that a lot of tooth problems were preventing particularly men from enrolling in the services and serving in the military.
The job of swelling the United States Army goes full speed ahead. Recruiting officers have been set up everywhere, and there's a fine list of vacancies. The new defense program...
And that was a big problem, as U.S. was facing war, that they needed men to recruit. And if you were missing teeth, you were not eligible.
The medical center is at Fort Meade, Maryland. And here the versatile soldier turns dentist, learning to extract and fill teeth and make artificial ones. That's the only time he looks down in the mouth.
And so as they learned about fluoride and realized, this could stop all of these teeth problems and allow us to have more soldiers, they were really excited about that.
Fascinating that it goes back to the Army. I did not expect that.
No, and that was such an interesting tidbit to learn that was such a key thing for the dental community to sort of latch onto is here's this really powerful solution that we think we've found, and it addresses this overwhelming problem in our community of having all of this tooth decay.
So when was fluoride first put into a city's water supply?
So in 1945, Grand Rapids, Michigan was the first city to introduce fluoride into the community water supply. It was this big deal. They have a monument in Grand Rapids to celebrate this achievement.
Oh, wow.
And it just continued from there. They continue to have other states and cities join. And then they did a city in New York, Newburgh, New York, and it was really effective. Children had fewer cavities. They had a 60% reduction in cavities. And that was really exciting for the dental community to see okay, adding this to our water supply is really effective.
By the 1950s, fluoride's popularity had extended beyond just water. It became a selling point for a new item taking dental hygiene by storm.
Now, after years of fluoride research, Procter & Gamble proudly announces triumph over tooth decay, available to everyone, everywhere, as it brings you Crest toothpaste with Fluoristan.
You had, Crest toothpaste come out in 1955, and so this is fluoride that's now, topically right for your teeth, going right on your teeth.
So avoid between meal treats. Visit the dentist regularly. And brush often with Crest with Fluoristan, the only toothpaste recognized effective against cavities.
So there was a realization that, fluoride is really effective. And so that became sort of the mantra that, fluoride is effective. This works. This is safe. This is great. But there was still researchers that were along the side sort of wanting to know more and not embrace it wholeheartedly.
Sarah says that skepticism from some researchers persisted throughout the 20th century.
Thinking, hey, we still should keep studying this. We might not know everything. What about other cells in the body? Is this affecting other things?
And in many ways, those questions have gained steam over time. Recently, a report from a federal program based in North Carolina raised alarms on another long-standing concern: potential neurological effects on children.
So the National Toxicology Program, which is actually based here in the Research Triangle, they had been looking at fluoride for a long time to try to identify this potential neurotoxic link. They did a huge review where they looked at all of the sort of studies they could find that addressed this topic. They reviewed 100 studies and found with moderate confidence, and that's sort of the scientific phrase, with moderate confidence, that when children were exposed to fluoride above 1.5 milligrams, or parts per million, it was linked to lower IQ. So that as fluoride ingestion increases, IQ level drops. And this is, potentially 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, 4 points. Not something that you would notice on an individual level, but at a population level that's concerning for scientists. It's still an open question. We're still learning more about that.
And just to say it again, the recommended level in the U.S. is 0.7 milligrams.
And they could not comment specifically on whether that was happening at the level in our current water. And that's sort of what this all hinges around, is people want to really fixate on, well, what's happening now? In the water I'm drinking, is this affecting my brain, my children's brain? But that's sort of the tricky question right now, is that the research cannot conclude that the fluoridated water we're drinking now has this impact. It's for water that has higher levels of fluoride.
Yeah, I mean, so the levels they're talking about are more than twice the amount that we have in our water currently, or that is recommended for our water currently. But then there's also the question of we're getting fluoride in other ways too, right? So do the studies address that as well?
The studies point that out, that we're not just getting fluoride from our water. We're getting it from our toothpaste, mouth rinses, from the foods we eat. Black tea in particular has very high levels of fluoride just because the plant absorbs it from the soil as it grows.
Wow.
Things like grapes are often pesticides have fluoride in them. So their concern is that if the dental community fixates on this sort of 0.7 number as you haven't proven this is a problem yet, they're saying, but wait, that's just one part of the equation. What about fluoride coming from all of these other sources? We're getting too much.
These ongoing questions about fluoride bring us back to Kinston, North Carolina, where Dr. Slade is conducting his multi-year study on the dental benefits of the mineral. Sarah says that Dr. Slade knew there would be some concerns over his research, so he spent the first year building trust, talking with people in the area, giving tours of their bottling facility, and hosting community forums.
In this community forum, he spoke and answered questions. There was also Stuart Cooper, who's the executive director of the Fluoride Action Network, which is opposed to fluoride being added to community water supplies.
The Fluoride Action Network does not oppose the use of fluoride toothpaste or fluoride in mouthwashes or other dental products.
This is Stuart Cooper, FAN's executive director, during a recent conversation with Sarah.
We simply oppose ingestion fluoride and especially water fluoridation, and we try to alert the public to fluoride toxicity or situations where they'll be overexposed.
He expressed his concerns and told community members, that he believed they weren't getting the full information, that they weren't being told about these neurotoxic effects on their children. And in speaking with the health director, that was sort of upsetting to her because she felt like it was coming from a place of fear-mongering and trying to be really frightening to parents who were being recruited to the study.
So is this randomized control trial going to be the silver bullet that, fixes the fluoride controversy and answers everyone's questions for good?
You want to say yes, but no, it won't be. Because as we said before, this is an emotional issue. This is really contentious. And unfortunately, facts are not always the way that people change their mind, as ironic as that sounds. I think this will be effective at offering evidence that fluoride is effective in this way. But this study is limited in what it can say. This study can only comment on the effectiveness at reducing cavities for children. This study can't say anything about IQ. It can't say anything about neurotoxic effects. That's not how it was designed. That's not the data they're collecting. So in terms of it settling the debate, no. It will add a layer to the scientific knowledge, but it won't settle the debate.
Dr. Slade's research will continue for a few years before he can draw any conclusions. In the meantime, Sarah says the debate about fluoride isn't going anywhere. But what's going to matter most is how we choose to hash it out.
I have come away from this story with just an additional layer of nuance that very few things are binary, where this is good and bad. This is sort of a yes and. Both things sort of exist together. Fluoride is really good for our teeth. Fluoride may also be problematic for our brains. We don't know enough to fully embrace or fully exclude. What's interesting is that a lot of the time, folks that bring up concerns with fluoride are sort of labeled fringe or conspiracy theorists. And you definitely have people that fit that description who may not like fluoride. And that's where it gets a little tricky because you have people who are reputable scientists who are studying this, who are asking valid questions and trying to do valid research. And then you also have groups that are maybe leaning a little bit more heavily on the public liberty or my freedom and justice angle. And so there's people that they come from different places, but they often all get lumped together as just you're opposed to fluoride, therefore you must be conspiracy theorist or you must believe all of these other false public health things. And I don't think that's entirely fair or true.
This episode of The Broadside was a co-production with The Assembly. If you'd like to read Sarah Israelson Hartley's article about fluoride at their website, we've dropped a link in the show notes. Charlie Shelton Ormond is our producer. Jared Walker is our editor. Our executive producer is Wilson Sayre. The Broadside is a production of WUNC North Carolina Public Radio and is part of the NPR network. If you have feedback or a story idea, you can email us at broadside@wunc.org. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a rating, a review, or share it with a friend. I'm Anissa Khalifa. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be back next week.